Ladies and gentlemen, today I will tell the story of the creation of the United Nations, one of the most important international organizations in world history. The United Nations was born from the devastation of global war and the deep desire of humanity to prevent such destruction from ever happening again. The first half of the 1900s was marked by unprecedented violence and instability. World War I, which lasted from 1914 to 1918, caused millions of deaths and widespread destruction. After the war, world leaders attempted to maintain peace through an organization called the League of Nations. The League of Nations was created in 1920 with the goal of preventing future wars by encouraging cooperation between countries. However, it failed for several key reasons. It had no military power to enforce decisions. Major powers, such as the United States, never joined. Aggressive nations like Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan ignored its authority. As a result, the League of Nations could not stop the rise of dictatorships or the outbreak of World War II in 1939. World War II was even more destructive than the first. From 1939 to 1945, the world witnessed the deaths of over 60 million people, the Holocaust, cities destroyed by bombing, and the first use of atomic weapons. By the middle of the war, Allied leaders realized that after the war ended, the world would need a stronger international organization to prevent future conflicts. This time, they wanted an organization that included all major powers, could take real action to maintain peace, promoted human rights and cooperation, and helped rebuild war-torn nations. The idea of the United Nations began during World War II, not after it. In 1941, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill met and issued a joint statement called the Atlantic Charter. This document outlined shared goals such as no territorial expansion, self-determination for nations, economic cooperation, and lasting peace. Although it was not a formal treaty, the Atlantic Charter laid the moral foundation for the United Nations. In 1942, President Roosevelt first used the term United Nations to describe the countries fighting together against the Axis powers. On January 1, 1942, 26 Allied nations signed the Declaration by United Nations, pledging to continue fighting together and not make separate peace agreements. This was the first official use of the name United Nations, and it symbolized unity against aggression. As the war continued, Allied leaders began serious planning. In 1944, representatives from the United States, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and China met at the Dumbarton Oaks Conference in Washington, D.C. Here, they proposed the structure of a new organization, a general assembly where all nations could meet, a security council responsible for maintaining peace, an international court of justice, and economic and social cooperation bodies. One major issue remained controversial: how much power the major countries should have. In February 1945, near the end of World War II, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin met at the Yalta Conference. At Yalta, they agreed the United Nations would be officially created. The Security Council would have 5 permanent members: United States, United Kingdom, Soviet Union, China, and France. These 5 countries would have veto power, meaning they could block decisions. This compromise was necessary to ensure that major powers would participate and support the organization. The final step took place in April 1945, when representatives from 50 countries gathered at the San Francisco Conference. Over 2 months, delegates debated and finalized the United Nations Charter, the founding document of the organization. The Charter clearly stated the goals of the United Nations: to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, to promote human rights, and to encourage social and economic progress. On June 26, 1945, the United Nations Charter was officially signed. The United Nations officially came into existence on October 24, 1945. After the Charter was ratified by the 5 permanent members and a majority of other nations, that date is now celebrated every year as United Nations Day. The UN headquarters was later established in New York City, symbolizing international cooperation on neutral ground. In its early years, the United Nations focused on helping refugees displaced by the war, rebuilding destroyed countries, and preventing another global conflict. In 1948, the UN adopted one of its most important documents, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which declared that all people are born free and equal in dignity and rights. This document influenced constitutions and laws around the world. Despite its goals, the United Nations has faced many challenges. During the Cold War, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union often caused the Security Council to become deadlocked due to veto power. The UN has been criticized for slow decision-making, limited enforcement power, and failure to prevent some conflicts. However, it has also achieved major successes in peacekeeping missions, humanitarian aid, disease prevention, and education and development programs. Today, the United Nations has 193 member states, making it nearly universal. It continues to address global issues such as war and peace, climate change, poverty and hunger, refugee crisis, and global health emergencies. Although it is not perfect, the United Nations remains the best attempt humanity has made to solve global problems through dialogue rather than war. In conclusion, the creation of the United Nations was a direct response to the failures of the past and the horrors of World War II. It was founded on the belief that cooperation is stronger than conflict, dialogue is better than violence, and peace requires collective responsibility. The United Nations stands as a symbol of hope that even after the darkest moments in history, nations can come together to work for a better future. Thank you.